it never gets any easier, but you become better able to cope with it. I still miss her. It's still, every day. It's still awful, but I'm better able to cope. It gets better. No, it doesn't get easier, but it gets better.
Hey, it's Chris here from Adventure Solos, where we help people in their 30s, 40s and 50s to rediscover themselves and meet new people. In this episode, we're talking to David and, well, how to describe David. So, unfortunately, he was relatively recently widowed, and we talk about that a little bit. But David is also a pagan minister that works in the prison service with offenders. We chat to him about what is paganism, why was it illegal, when and how did he find his faith, and what was it like studying at the Goddess Temple. If you'd like to find out more about Adventure Solos events, visit adventuresolos.com. That's adventuresolos.com, where you're very welcome to stay in touch by joining the mailing list. So adventuresolos.com and enter your details to sign up to the mailing list.
I've been out all day, so I'm freezing cold. That's why I've got all this stuff on, because I've just come in, and this isn't a heated room.
We recorded that one with Claire, I think it was, and Noel came on and he said, I rolled a quad bike today. And then he's just sent me a photo like 15 minutes ago of, it was the same as your bike, Noel, but I don't think it was your bike, was it, on the ground? So he's been out on a motorbike. What's happened?
Oh, just one of my friends always falls off. He's 65, and he's fantastic at falling off. But by that I mean when he falls off, he never hurts himself. And I think he probably just throws his bike off to the side. But yeah, he was fine. But every time you think, no, this is the one where he breaks his arm. But even today, he got away with it again.
And he was off road though, weren't you? You were doing a bit of green laning or something by the looks of it.
Yeah, just going down a track. Yeah. But it was lovely out today. Great rainbows, because it's just really wild weather here at the moment. But you've got these sunny spells coming in. So I've got this great picture of a rainbow over Grasmere. It looks gorgeous.
Fantastic.
David, welcome anyway. Thank you very much for joining us. And yeah, it's nice to have you here. I'm excited about this chat actually, and I'm sure some of it won't necessarily be easy, but I'm really interested. You came on the Borwick Hall event back in November. It was just before my birthday, wasn't it? And I just thought you had a really interesting story. We had a brief chat whilst we were out for that walk, on the first morning, I think. About paganism, but yeah, it's something I don't know very much about at all, so really excited to hear about that. And then you were one of two people also on the event that had been widowed, and I think fairly recently, was it? So yeah, if you're happy to chat to us, I guess about both these things, and I kind of feel that they might tie together as we go through as well, then yeah, it'd be really interesting. Brilliant.
Okay, I'm David Spofforth, one-time user of Adventure Solos, but it won't be the only time.
Yeah, brilliant. And so where are you based?
I'm based in London, in central London.
Yeah, perfect. And is that where you're from originally?
No, originally I'm from Liverpool, but just outside Liverpool. But I've been down here for about 25 years now.
Do you mind me asking how old you are, or roughly?
In a few weeks, I'll be turning 55.
I was going to say, how do you feel about turning 55?
Oh, I guess I'm one of those people who who seems to feel more comfortable in himself the older he gets. I've been quite comfortable by getting older.
Was it easier turning 40 or 50?
We'll come back. I think we'll probably need to come back to that question about 40. But I was really comfortable turning 50.
A lot of people, you might have been one of them actually, David. Quite a few people said to me not to worry about turning 40 because they said the 40s was one of the best decades and the 50s was the best decade. Was that you?
My 40s were great, but I was really happy turning 50 too. Yeah, 50 as well. Yeah.
I heard the other day that if you manage to get through between sort of 48 and early 50s, say 52, if you're fine health-wise between 48 and 52, you're good for the next 25 years.
Sounds good. I mean, what I heard is when you turn 50, your physical health will be exactly what you deserve.
So this maybe brings us on to one of the topics it'd be nice to chat about, which is paganism. So how long have you been a pagan, or is that how you would describe it? Are you been a pagan?
Yeah, I'd say so. Really, since my late 30s, I was never really much of anything before. I grew up in a household that called itself Church of England, but only the christenings, marriages, and funerals type of churchgoer. I never really followed followed religion at all for the most part. My wife was Christian, and she always thought that there wasn't a spiritual side to me that she wanted to bring out. But when it did come out, it wasn't quite as she would have expected.
Would you describe her as a practicing Christian?
More so as time went on. She wasn't much of a church goer, but she did start going to church more regularly towards the end of her life, yeah.
So how did the paganism side sort of come through? Like, I guess it'd be really interesting to hear. I mean, let's start at square one. What is paganism, and how did it sort of come into your life?
Okay, well, paganism, I think the Pagan Federation described it as any nature-based polytheistic spirituality.
Okay, you've got me there. What's polytheistic?
Believing in multiple gods and goddesses.
Ah, cool. So any nature-based polytheistic, which, sorry, I'm probably butchering that, but many gods. And what was there another bit to it?
No, not really. That's really the basics of it. It's so we have multiple gods and goddesses like there used to be back in the pre-Christian days, and those gods and goddesses tended to be ones that were based within nature, as in gods of the hunt, goddesses of the harvest, or gods of thunder, you might say. Or right to the heart of the matter, you could even say Mother Nature.
And did you mention? I thought when we were having that chat, you said it was. Well, is it Christianity? Is it a form of Christianity or not? Are they completely separate?
No, it isn't. It's from essentially it's from before Christianity, because of course the essence of Christianity is you've got the one God. We don't go along with that. We like to have lots. The more the merrier.
Well, I was going to say, is there much documented sort of history as far as paganism goes? Has there been much written down over the decades, over the centuries, rather?
Ooh, now there's a thing, and can be quite a sore point. But it depends on the particular religion. You've got some pagan faiths, particularly across Europe and North Africa, like Egyptian, Greek, Roman paganism, where you get quite a lot written down, lots of documented history, particularly Roman. The problem we've got in this country with Celtic-based paganism is the Celts never had a written language. There was lots of oral tradition, some of which has been written down over the centuries, but mostly by Christians. So you have to kind of read between the lines. So a lot of what the old pagan stories were and old pagan practices is very sketchy, and it's had to be sort of reinvented over the years. When paganism came back in a big way in the 1950s with the advent of Wicca, a lot had to be reinvented or rediscovered.
What do you mean by the advent of Wicca?
In 1951, the Witchcraft Act was finally repealed in this country, and what had been underground movements were able to come above ground.
Sorry, Witchcraft Act was repealed, so people were. What did that let people do?
There was a law which was mostly about fraudulent spiritualists, for example, con artists. By the end, which was basically about anybody who claimed to be a witch was basically illegal. Now that was stricken from the record books in 1951, and so it became legal to call yourself a witch. A chap by the name of Gerald Gardner, who had been involved in various occult movements in the early 20th century, was able to come out into the open and as a witch, and founded a movement called Wicca, which was the first real public pagan movement of the 20th century.
So paganism had obviously been around thousands of years ago, as you say, sort of pre-Christ or whatever, and then it's been underground for presumably hundreds, if not thousands of years before being sort of resurrected, if you will, in the last century.
It's very hard to say what it was doing in the intervening period, but I think really from sort of records that have been traced back, it's probably really around the 17th century that you can start seeing it, glimmers of it starting to come back into action.
Cool. So how's it come into your life in your late 30s?
Well, I was down in Glastonbury. My wife who was a jazz pianist, was playing a gig down there.
Not at Glastonbury, the festival, then?
No. But she was playing a gig there, and I went down with her, as I sometimes did. And while she was practicing with the band, I was out and about, and I went to a place called the Chalice Well in Glastonbury, which is a natural spring that's been running for thousands of years. It's one of those sort of healing waters. It's a beautiful garden. And sitting in there, I just felt just a wonderful spiritual energy in there. And I thought, hang on a minute, this feels nice. I should think about what is this? It felt like a mother energy. It felt very comfortable, mothering. And then in the town, I found the Goddess Temple in Glastonbury, and thought I like the look of this. And started picking up leaflets and started reading a book, and it talked about a training course that they run for to be a priest of the goddess. And I figured I'll read the book. If it gels with me, I'll sign up and try and do it.
And what was your wife's initial reaction to all of this?
Well, like I say, she always thought there was something spiritual in me, but it didn't. But she wasn't expecting it to come out in that way.
Was she happy for it to arrive in any form in the end?
Let's just say she put up with it.
So I presume things did resonate with you, and maybe if there's anything in particular. But you said then about studying was it at or to become a priest of the goddess?
Was studying to become a priest of the goddess, and it was at the Goddess Temple. And it was one of those courses where people sign up to it almost to see if it works, and then often will drop out. In the first year, there were 22 people on the course. By the end of the first year, we were down to 12. People were coming in, trying it, finding it, and I would either find, yes, this works, or no, this isn't for me, and would drop out. Me, it just kept working. And I stayed through the whole 3 years of the course.
What was this leading to for you? What was the end goal for you doing this?
The end of it sort of all coincided with being offered redundancy where I worked. I was working in the public sector at the time when they were offering lots of voluntary redundancies, and I thought, okay, I am now qualified as a priest. I want to sort of be able to practice this, and now I'm getting offered a redundancy in my day job. So I could take a chance, take the redundancy, and see if I can perhaps make a living out of doing my priest work.
So what was your job, the one that you where there was redundancies? I'm just wondering what sort of transition it was from whatever your day job was to becoming a priest of the goddess.
Well, most of my career, I was a graphic designer within publishing departments within government.
So how did you find that transition? Or was it a transition or not?
It was a very comfortable transition. It felt like I was sort of leaving one world behind and entering a new one. And this is sort of brings us back to what we were talking about before, because during this period is when I turned 40. So I sort of called my training as a priest and moving into that new world was my midlife crisis.
And so did you say you did feel quite comfortable during the 40s or when you turned 40, should I say?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, it was a very positive transition.
Yeah, brilliant. So you became a priest of the goddess. You went full time with that. Is that what you're still doing?
It is. I started out by doing some work doing funerals. I trained as a funeral celebrant, so being the person who stands up in the front of the family and sort of delivers the funeral service. It was something I felt as if I could do, and that was going okay in a small way. It wasn't building up very quickly, but it was doing okay. But then I saw an advert looking that the prison service was looking for pagan chaplains to work in prisons, and I applied for that 10 years ago this month, and I've been doing that ever since. It's my 10th anniversary this month.
What do you think had led the prison service into seeking someone out to do that? Presumably, was that something quite new to the prison service at that point, do you think?
Not very new, no. There've been pagan chaplains in prison services since the mid-90s, but it's part of what the prison service does for people who are inside is that they let them, in England and Wales anyway, whatever religion you are, they will let you carry on practicing that faith. It's because it's, quite frankly, it's a very important part of a person's journey, and it leads to rehabilitation and in many ways.
So are lots of people in prison very surprised to hear that there's a pagan minister on offer to them?
Oh yes, I was very surprised. But I'm very pleased to see it. Anybody who goes into prison, if they declare what their faith is, the prison service will do their best to provide a chaplain of that faith.
So that must be quite interesting work, perhaps challenging, rewarding. How's that been?
Yeah, challenging, rewarding, all of the above.
Are you working with men and women, or?
Yes, yeah, both. Because when you're a minority faith chaplain, you tend not to be based in one prison. You tend to sort of go do a few hours here, a few hours there, and sort of go around all the prisons in the area, doing classes every day in each prison.
And is it a sort of a one-to-one sort of meeting usually?
It can be if there's only one person there, and we'll end up doing lots of one-to-one work, pastoral work. But for the most part, actually, you have groups. Run groups, not big groups necessarily, but groups.
Do you ever get people come in and sort of confessing stuff to you or anything like that, or does it just not work like that at all?
Doesn't really work like that. We tend not to. It's more about where they are and looking to the future.
Yeah, and that's what I guess I thought. In a way, it'd almost be part of their journey. If maybe sometimes it starts with I did this, or I was like this, I'm now here, and this is where I want to be, kind of thing. But yeah, you're more on the present and future, are you?
Yes.
And I guess then, if you've been doing this work for 10 years, have you seen people sort of change through their, I guess, faith or beliefs or from where they're trying to get to?
Yes, very much so. It's the importance I see of having an active chaplaincy in the prison service, because people do change. People might come in without having any kind of faith and discover a faith while they're inside, and it helps give them a strength. It doesn't really matter what that faith is, but if they find a faith, it helps them.
Does that happen a lot to people, do you think, in prison?
I think it does, yes.
There's a lot of time to think, isn't there, I suppose?
Well, yes, there is.
I listened to a really interesting podcast a few months back about, it was a guy, I think his name was Jacob. I might be wrong. I want to say Jacob Dunn, but I could be mistaken. But he'd basically been sort of, I guess, scrappy, if you will. He'd had fights and stuff when he was younger, and one of his friends got in a fight and he punched this guy that he was fighting. He kind of ran down the street to the pub or whatever and punched this guy, and kind of the person that he punched ended up dying. And so this guy then went to prison, but he'd been through the restorative justice process, which was what most of the podcast was about. So that was really interesting, about how it was the parents of the boy that he'd punched, or the lad that he'd punched, that wanted to engage in this for sort of their sake. But yeah, he found he'd got a lot out of it. And I guess in some ways, I'm sure in some ways it's different, but in some ways maybe it's similar as well.
Yes, and I've seen people people I've been working with go through the restorative justice program as well, and it's very successful and very rewarding.
Is there a lot of it in prisons, or in the UK at least?
As much of it as they can. It's one of those things where they do it as often as funding will allow. As with anything these days, money is tight.
Yeah, and I'm sure money's tight, but it just feels like the sort of right thing to do, in the same way. Like, I think the NHS is under pressure, and sometimes that, I think, is because we're reacting to problems rather than necessarily dealing with them. Like, you're given drugs to deal with symptoms rather than to tackle root cause and, I guess, lifestyles and all this sort of stuff. And I suspect that there's a similar thing happening in prisons, isn't there? Like, we're punishing people or locking them up or whatever, and they're serving their time, but what are we actually doing in the long term to get rid of that? I don't know. Maybe I mean, it probably all comes back to politics, and maybe it's the problem with short termism. Like, people are just looking at the next 5 years and not the next 20 or 30 years, isn't it?
We just do the best. We just do the best we can with the resources we've got in the system.
In the 10 years you've been doing it, David, have you seen the prison population change much in either its demographic or just the people that are finding themselves in prison?
I don't think I really have seen a great shift. Looking back, I think I'm seeing the same. I'm certainly seeing the same sort of numbers.
Yeah, and is it frustrating seeing people come in because of the same sort of social circumstances?
Yes, absolutely. It's never nice to see somebody come back in after they've gone out. It's nice to if we've worked with them before, but it's nice to see you, but not in these circumstances.
Are you still in touch with anyone that's come out of prison and is still practicing, and is kind of like, are you in touch with the, if you will, success stories?
Honestly, wish I could, but unfortunately, that's not allowed. No news is good news. Yes, if I don't hear from them again, that means they're doing well.
Yeah, if you've done your part of the job right, then you don't hear from them again.
And so is this your full-time occupation? Are you doing funerals at all anymore?
No, that kind of dropped away. It was like I was doing funerals and prison work at the start, and then as the prison work went up, it ended up taking over all of my time. And so whilst I'd be very happy to get the occasional bit of funeral work, I'm not sort of promoting that side of my work anymore.
I just wondered if there's any, recently it made the news that in some census results, I think it was a census result, the number of people that declared themselves as non-religious or certainly weren't prescribing to Church of England anymore. Are there any statistics on the amount of people practicing paganism or officially?
Oh, there is, yes. and very encouraging it is too. Still, unfortunately, only down as other, and then you write in what you are. But but looking back at the 2001 census, you had 40,000 people registering as a form of pagan religion. That went up to 80,000 in 2011, and in the latest census, it's 137,000. So it's heading upwards at a fast rate. However, I have my suspicion that a lot of that isn't necessarily new pagans. It's a lot of people who weren't willing to be open about it, who are now more comfortable with it.
And open about it, or do you think even maybe perhaps just giving it a name, even perhaps I wonder if there are people that are pagans and don't realise it.
Yeah, that too, I suppose. Yes.
When you say sort of prepared to be open about it, do you feel that you or that pagans are judged in some way, or why would people be shy about it?
Well, put it this way. I was once asked by a Christian volunteer in the service, what's relationships like now between Christians and pagans? And I said, it's better since you stopped burning us. There's always been a bit of a bit of a stigma attached to saying you're pagan. People have been getting worried about it. People who don't understand, might accuse you of being like a Satanist or devil worshipper, which is rubbish because we don't actually have any sort of devils in paganism. People worry about being discriminated against. More and more, I think people are more aware of paganism and it's more in the mainstream than it ever has been before.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, that's part of the reason for having you on is I knew nothing about it. So yeah, I just didn't know what it meant really at all. So it's interesting to hear a little bit about it. Oh, you mentioned some of what they believe in is the sort of, it's all based in nature. And I guess that probably ties back to life cycles and things. And obviously also, is that right?
It does. Cycles is a big part of it, whether it's following the patterns of the moon cycle or the cycle of the year and the seasons, or the seasons of your own life. The transitions you go through as you age.
And that probably brings us on to a little bit. Is it just within the last 12 months that unfortunately your wife has passed away?
It was about 7 months ago now, yeah.
Yeah, and really sorry to hear that. So maybe could you tell us, if you're comfortable, a little bit about, I guess, if, presumably she was ill for a while, and maybe, if you've been practicing paganism for, 15 years or so? So maybe as that part of the paganism side has come into your life, that your wife has started to become unwell, has she?
Well, it was about 5 years ago that she began to sort of develop symptoms of Parkinson's, and slowly it developed a form of dementia as well. And around the time when COVID started, the time we entered lockdown, I was having to become a full-time carer, and so it's even if there hadn't been a lockdown, I would have had to have taken a career break then anyway.
And is that what ended up happening then? You had a career break whilst you were caring for her?
Yeah, I became a full-time carer, and and as her illness took its course, and last summer, she had a fall and broke her hip, and she had the surgery for it, but didn't recover from the operation.
Oh, yeah. Had you been together for a long time?
22 years.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people, when you say sort of widowed, people think, or probably in my mind as much as anything, you think of people that are sort of far older, but actually, I don't think it's really that uncommon for people to lose, their other half in their 30s, 40s, 50s or younger.
This is true. Yes. Yeah.
So how's life been? I guess obviously you've had the challenge of sort of losing your wife, but then I guess you've been back to work. So how's all this been?
Going back to work has been quite straightforward. I guess I'm lucky in that there aren't many pagan chaplains around in the system, and when I put the word out that I was wanting to go back to work, my old a lot of my old prisons said, "Yes, we still want you back." Yep. They hadn't replaced me in the meantime, and even a couple of new ones that I hadn't been in before wanted me to start going in.
I mean, you're going to have to forgive my ignorance here, David, but what are the pagan beliefs around death or about what happens after death?
Well, I think we all vary. Paganism tends to be a fairly individual thing. Certainly, a common belief within paganism is some form of reincarnation. It's based on the principle, you look at the moon in the sky, it shrinks down to nothing, sort of dies in there, and then is reborn a day or two later. In the winter, we see all the trees and plant life effectively die off and then bloom again in the spring. And we see no reason why our own spirits and souls shouldn't do likewise. So I see it as when we die, our souls go off to a form of afterlife where we rest and heal, and then get reborn.
Has that helped you during the last year?
Oh yes, and oddly enough, my wife practiced a form of Christianity which included a form of reincarnation as well, and so I know exactly what she's up to. I know that she's perfectly happy and having a good rest and recovery wherever she is, and catching up with family and friends, and browsing through a reincarnation catalogue, looking for anything around.
So, I mean, do you mind me asking, so did she have a Christian burial, or was she cremated, or how did that work?
Oh, she insisted she wanted to be buried. That was something she was always absolutely...
In a churchyard?
No, actually. We buried her in a natural burial ground.
Oh, nice. There was a guy that came on one of our events. It was the West Highland Way event in the summer, and he was working in one of those natural burial grounds. Yeah, somewhere down south.
What is it? Is it sort of some woodland, or is it, what's the lie of that land?
It is. It's not very woodland. The one that she's in Guildford isn't very woodland yet, but it's very sort of wild land, and it's all growing nicely. I visited it yesterday, and the grass is starting to cover over her plot very nicely.
Are you in touch with anyone else that has been, I don't know if you'd use the term yourself, but has been widowed?
Yes, I did a course called Living with Loss in the autumn that was run by the charity Age Exchange that did a lot of work with my wife, helped supporting her when she was ill. And they got in touch with me and said they were running this 10-week course, and would I like to join in with? There was about half a dozen of us on the course, all recent widows and widowers, and we could just explore issues about coping, all together. So yeah.
Well, I was going to say you had time. I mean, it's a terrible thing, isn't it? But you had time to see this coming in a way, didn't you?
Yeah.
And so at the end of it, Has it been? How's it been different to how you might have imagined it would be, life without her?
It's always, no matter how much you prepare for it, it always is a bit of a shock. Because you always think, well, there's a bit more time. But yeah, I guess because she had dementia as well, I was sort of the grieving period. I was losing her for a couple of slowly over a couple of years. So it's so it was a long build up.
I was going to say, was the course of any value to you? Did that help?
Yeah, it did. It was nice to be able to share experiences with people who understand, who went through the same thing.
Are you still in touch with any of those people now that the course is finished?
Well, it's funny you should say that, but I don't know whether you hear the odd little notification ping.
It's an active group.
And one of them was a little reminder email from someone saying, from the group saying, we're still meeting up next week for a tea.
So how are you feeling? I mean, you must, a grieving process, I guess, never ends. And in a way, you're at a relatively early stage of that. How do you feel, I guess, now, and how far you've come so far, and what the future looks like?
There's been a lot of ups and downs. I tried to, I was doing a lot in my first few months, trying to go out a lot, rebuilding a social life, getting active, trying lots of new things, going on adventure solos weekends, and it did get to a point near as we got near to Christmas where I was reminding myself, I'm not 30 anymore. I need to slow down a bit.
What brought you to that conclusion? What were you doing that made you think you had to slow down?
Knocking my shoulder out of place, having a bad landing after trying paragliding.
All right, that would do it.
Oh, did you? How was paragliding?
Well, I managed to get a flight, and I was flying okay, but my landing is pretty rubbish.
Yeah, so this is nearly 20 years ago now, but I did a what they called a static line parachute jump. So you jump out the plane by yourself, but you don't free fall for very long. Basically, you've got a rope attached to the plane, and after like 20 meters, your chute comes out. And you've got to have some training in case it doesn't come out right, and you have to release your emergency one, or mine was a little bit twisted, so you just have to kick your legs a bit to untwist it. But yeah, they taught us, we were told to fall when we were hitting the ground. They kind of said, well, obviously hitting the ground's a dangerous moment. But yeah, we were told to roll. But as I came in, I was quite proud of myself, actually. I just managed to brake at the right time, and I was like, I'm fine, I can just walk this through. But yeah, so you had a bit of an awkward landing doing your paraglide, did you?
Yeah.
Is this solo? Doing it solo? You got to this stage, right? Wow.
Yeah, it was, yes. You get, even on your first day of training doing paragliding, you get to do a solo flight. Not very high and not very far, but not very long, but you do get up there.
Have you given this up, or are you pursuing it?
I booked for 2 days, 2 classes, and my second day got cancelled because of bad weather, and I haven't booked the second date yet. But I will do. But it might be it. Paragliding classes aren't cheap, and I had to really make a choice as to whether to carry on doing more paragliding or whether to do the Adventure Solos Canoe Scotland.
Oh, I was just going to say, what did you do with Chris? So he took you down that horrible windy lake.
Are you on about Loch Ness?
You're going to tell me that's good because you use a sail, aren't you?
Oh, it's brilliant when we get the sails out. It's so much fun. But David's got this to look forward to. You've just put everybody off. That's people's favourite event and mine.
I think it's because I always imagine a worst case scenario that you come out of the canal or the river. So is it a river at one end, or it's a canal at both ends, isn't it?
Well, it's the whole thing is a canal, but basically what it's doing, there's 3 big lochs along the way, including Loch Ness is the biggest one. There's Loch Oich and Loch Lochy, which is a brilliant name. But the canal, the man-made little bits of canal, join those 3 lochs up along the route.
I just said whenever I've driven past Loch Ness, it just always looks horrifically windy. So I always assume that it must be awful. But then you're never against the wind, presumably. You're always doing it in the direction of the wind, aren't you?
Yeah, we do it in a direction of the wind. So generally it's from just outside Fort William and we head to the northeast, and that's the direction of prevailing wind. But if the wind is ever the other way, then we generally switch it around. So we've done that a couple of times where we just stick everyone in a minibus, get the trailer and start at the other end instead.
Yeah, change my mind. It sounds fantastic.
But you've not done that yet, have you, David? So I don't want to be scaring you either.
No, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great time because it's going to form part of a big 2-week holiday for me because I've got the first week in Scotland, and then I'll be going from there straight down to Glastonbury for the 2023 Goddess Conference there. So.
Oh wow! What happens there then?
It's where all the various priests and priestesses and all get together for a week of workshops and jollity.
Yeah, sounds good. I presume you drink within, there's nothing. Yeah, you drink alcohol, do you?
I do, except the problem of being a full-time carer for a couple of years during lockdown is that I've become a complete lightweight.
Oh, me too.
One glass of wine and I'm gone.
Oh, I'm in the same camp as you there, David. Like one glass of wine and yeah, I'm tipsy and I can't finish a second.
Yeah, doing stupid things like winning games of Cards Against Humanity.
Yeah. So the event that David did come on, Noel, was the Boric Hall weekend. So I guess a similar format. Noel's coming on one next month, actually, Dearne Valley, down near Sheffield. So Dearne Valley weekend. So that's going to be his first foray into an Adventure Solos event. How are you feeling about it, Noel?
I haven't even looked. Well, I haven't even looked at it. I don't even know what I'm doing. But why do I think it involves swinging around in trees or something? I must have seen a picture.
There's a few things going on. In fact, I've got the schedule here. There's a bit that's not advertised. You'll like it. Well, I say you'll like this.
My biggest issue with it is that I haven't really yet told my basically wife that I'm going on some kind of solos weekend.
Yeah, but it's not like that. People come on and they're in relationships.
But I'm going to use this podcast to break the news to her.
Yeah. Well, the solos thing, Ashley, if you're listening, it's not a relationship status thing. It's just people booking on by themselves.
Thank you. Yes, that's exactly what I tried to tell her.
People do come along that are married or in a relationship and their other half just doesn't want to do it or was busy or whatever. And so, yeah, that's the dynamic is meant to be that people just book on by themselves. And then there's a group of people there that we have a bit of a laugh with, hopefully.
Perfect.
So these aren't even on the. Some of these are in. Like we're doing a bit of abseiling, a zip wire. There's some high ropes. You say something called aero ball. There's a laser tag, but this isn't on the schedule. But we're going to be doing it as a buggy build. So I don't know exactly how this works. I think we split into 2 teams, and I think they have some stuff there.
Like a soapbox build.
I think it's maybe halfway between Scrap Heap Challenge and soapbox racing.
That's good. So some heights. I was going to say about your paragliding, David. Are you okay with heights then? Are you?
Oh yeah, I love heights.
And you knew that going into it.
Yeah, no, I've got no problem with heights. I love it. My younger brother is absolutely terrified of them, so I get to scare him silly.
I think I am a bit scared of heights, but I know that I also it's something you can get used to, can't you? Quite quickly, I think. I've worked on scaffolding quite a lot, and at first when I'm on top of scaffolding, it's scary as anything, and then after a few days, you feel absolutely fine about it, and that's just scaffolding.
My problem would be the other end. I'd be terrified going down a pothole. Fine with heights, not great with depths.
So I guess just maybe wrapping things up a little bit, but you mentioned before sort of coming along with the Boric Hall weekend and you were doing the course that, what was it, learning to live with loss or whatever at the same time. It sounded like almost you just wanted to be really busy, partly to rebuild, I guess, networks and things like that and the social thing, but we just trying to keep occupied perhaps, and Adventure Solos that weekend was maybe a part of that.
It was, I guess part of it, trying to live life as as a solo. So with so many things being geared to couples these days, I wanted to go on a little holiday, a little break that I could go to by myself, but I still wanted to be social. I still wanted to be around people and do things with people, but didn't want to be around couples.
Yeah, I like being around people.
Yeah, and I hate being around couples, so this weekend sounds perfect for me.
If you had one piece of advice for someone, David, maybe that's going through a grieving process, what would it be?
I would say get out, throw yourself into life, be around people, do things new, do something you've never done before. Yeah. But for goodness sake, pace yourself.
Brilliant. And I guess, if you believe and your wife believe in reincarnation, so I guess is she aware of what you're doing and how you're coping and watching you, or does it not work like that?
I think she is. One other thing I'm doing at the moment is a spiritual healing course, and and when I do the work, when I'm working with people, doing a healing with them, because my wife was a trained healer as well, she always turns up when I'm doing it. I always feel her there, feel her presence. Yeah. So yeah, so I see her quite often.
Would she have done any of the activities that you're doing? Would she have, I don't know, come on the weekend or jumped out of doing your is it parasailing, paragliding?
No, I really think she wouldn't have.
Would she have let you do it?
Probably not.
Well, funny enough, in a way, we were talking to a guy called Peter recently, and he was saying the same thing, kind of getting a bit of time back to yourself and doing what you want to do is the healthiest thing you can do when you find yourself in that situation. So, yeah, brilliant. And I sort of just want to ask, like, are you doing okay?
Getting there. It's a slow process. One of the things that we think in the Living with Loss group is it never gets any easier, but you become better able to cope with it. So I still miss her. It's still every day. It's still awful, but I'm better able to cope, and just and I'm nowhere near the end of the process yet, but every day I'm trying something, and getting through the day, and and every so often find new ways of living to help. It gets better. No, it doesn't get easier, but it gets better.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. Yeah, it must be tricky just on so many levels that you almost don't think about, like, knowing anyone close to you has died can be, as you say, such a shock for, even as you say, if you're expecting it. But then you just think, as you say, almost the companion stuff and things that you lose along the way, and just living with other people and whatever.
Yeah, I miss having someone to hold hands with.
Yeah, well, that's sweet, and at least you did hold hands. I'm sure a lot of couples don't, but at least you had that. Well, thank you. I feel like we've just skimmed the surface, really, but I guess just getting the message out there and chatting about it, like, I'm sure there's lots of other people that have been widowed and know people that have been widowed when, at a relatively young age. So thank you for talking to us about that and for giving us a bit of an insight to paganism as well.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Right, thank you very much, David, and we'll catch up in the summer, if not before, on the on Noel's favourite event.
In Scotland, and enjoy your weekend, Noel.
Thank you. I hope I'll survive. Nice to meet you, David.